Hello my Whoop friends. Do you remember the community post in my YouTube community about a month ago? I did it. I actually went there again with my tiny Whoop. Take a look at this beautiful structure. Isn't this made for tiny Whoops? All these options from different flight lines. However, this was also a bit of a downfall for me. I almost couldn't decide on a racetrack. I couldn't see the forest anymore because of so many trees, so to speak. But the structure was definitely beautiful and very fascinating for me as an FPV drone race pilot. A little Whoop paradise. I think the builder must also have been an FPV drone pilot. How else could it be that he built an almost perfect FPV training structure right in the city? Could that have been a coincidence? In any case, it was all over me when I discovered this structure made of granite blocks. I had to go back there one day with my tiny Whoop. The whole thing started with a train ride that morning at 5 a.m., believe it or not. I wanted to get there early, before sunrise, to have some time before the big crowds arrive. I could hardly believe that I was actually doing this, but I did it, thanks to you too, my dear online Whoop friends. You motivate me to do things that I wouldn't have done otherwise. In a positive sense, after the train ride it was about a 15-minute walk. Luckily I was able to borrow a handcart with which I could transport my legendary FPV box. If you want to know what's in my legendary FPV box, then you can watch this video. You can find the link in the video description. When I got to the spot, I gave my tiny Whoop 4 new propellers. It didn't fly so well after the last crash and I thought the cause was definitely a bent propeller. Unfortunately, it turned out that it wasn't the propellers. At that point I didn't know that there was a crack in the frame that I hadn't seen. I have now learned from this that I always test the Whoop the evening before I drive somewhere the next day. And that a crack in the frame can have a significant impact on flight behavior. I repaired the frame later. You can see how I did it in this community post in my YouTube community. I then accepted that my Whoop wouldn't fly ideally that day and started flying. The Whoop is the Betafpv 75 Pro in my ButterflyFPV edition. That means I modified the Whoop a bit. In the following onboard flight videos you can see this Whoop flying. However, as already mentioned, it was in a damaged condition with a crack in the frame, which significantly affected the flight. And the outside temperature was also a bit low. That's why the lipos also had a reduced power output and an increased voltage sag. If you want to get to know this Whoop or my modifications in more detail, then take a look at the playlist of this Whoop on my YouTube channel. The link is in the video description.
my Whoop friends, the Whoop in this video is the Meteor 75 Pro from Betafpv, but not in the stock version, in my ButterflyFPV version with some modifications. For example, some holes in the canopy as well as in the frame to make it lighter. Direct soldered motor cables to the board without motor plugs. AWG20 main cable. BT 2.0 main connector. Titanium motor screws. And tiny Whoop pinch cam. As well as an OVX 300 VTX from Happy Model. And that's about it. I do have some videos about those modifications and some other videos on my channel. Please check them out.
At this point, I would like to thank everyone who supports me in pursuing my path. With my family, my girlfriend, my friends, and with you, the viewer of this video and perhaps the supporter and subscriber of this channel. It's only thanks to all of you that I can do what I do. I hope I can return to this spot again next year. This time a lot of things weren't optimal, and I hadn't taken some things into account. It was difficult for me to choose a route when flying because there were so many options for flight lines in this place. In addition, my tiny Whoop was partially defective and didn't fly as well as I'm used to. Then a slight breeze at times. The poorly performing lipos because of the cold and later the many people. But through all these difficulties I learned a lot again. Most of the time you learn something when you go through difficulties. If you persevere until the end and don't give up. Above all, I have to come back to this spot next summer. Maybe on a warm summer evening. Or summer morning, because the spot is illuminated at night. The nice thing about being at a spot for the third or fourth time is the experience. You are so much better prepared. Most of the time it's best the third or fourth time at a spot. Then the spot is a bit familiar but still new. You then often find better lines and don't always have the feeling of missing a good line. And I also learned something very unexpected. Racetrack design. Due to the light wind, I had to design a track that could be flown even in strong winds. I already knew that, but I didn't yet know the factor of cold weather and the resulting lower performance of the lipos in connection with a racetrack. Normally I don't fly when the weather is too cold, but I had to find a solution here. Actually it was quite simple. Less up and down. Fewer changes in altitude on the racetrack. Actually logical, but somehow I was never aware of this until now when I was designing a track. I was then able to incorporate this new experience into my next indoor racetrack. Stay tuned for the video. So that day I learned how to design a track more efficiently and in a more energy-saving manner. That alone was worth visiting the spot there. Every day a little further than the last day. That's all that matters, right? In any case, I am very grateful that I was able to experience this day and share it with you. I wish each of you many beautiful and challenging experiences with your tiny Whoops. Happy flying, my Whoop friends. Whoop whoop!